This is a test of the boundary part alert system. Welcome to tonight's Sean Connery, James Bond special podcast, because we're not going to talk about that. I've had enough now. I genuinely meaned it when I tweeted that earlier on, that I just can't be arsed talking about this shite anymore. But now that I've got three eager Latics fans with me on Zoom who are eager to let go and vent and do what needs to be done, I'm actually bang up for it again now. So I'd like to welcome to this week's podcast, we've got Will and Steve from Push the Boundary, who regular listeners will know. And I'm very pleased to have Andy Halliwell, who's the fan of the week, on this week's podcast. So welcome, Andy.
Thanks for the invite, gents.
Who wants to go first, lads? We've just lost 2-0 to Salford. Just before we came on air, so to speak, Andy was just saying, I don't think that we really expected to win that game anyway. So, Andy, you go first, mate. You didn't expect to win. We didn't win.
I didn't expect to win. I didn't expect to win. You know, you're in a position where Salford have got so much more money than we have, bizarrely and unfortunately. So I don't expect really to be able to compete. I thought James Wilson was a cut above anyone else on the pitch. He looked really lively in that first half. But having said all of that, I was just aghast at the starting lineup. I couldn't believe that if McAlhenney is injured and he's our top scorer, surely, at least one of Rowe, Dearnley or Bahambula has got to start, because they're our attacking threats. And then he's got the Australian lad up front, Blackwood, and a winger in Grant, and neither of them look like a centre forward to me. And Blackwood looks weak. It doesn't look like he's got much at all. So Rowe, I don't know about you, but I've probably made my mind up on Rowe now. I've seen enough of him. I don't think he's that good, and that's the reason why he's a 30-year-old that never played in league football before, and he's not very quick, but he can hold the ball up. He's got a right shot on him, and he can take a free kick. We had a lovely free kick in the first half, about 25 yards out, and I was thinking if he was on the pitch, he'd be taking it, and Keele had done. Put it over, didn't he, or wide? Okay, keeper saved it, didn't he? It was one wide in the second half, which was Grant. So you just think you're just aghast at the selection. So I don't know who's making that decision. Has Harry Kewell got 100% decision on who starts, or is Mo interfering with the lineup, or is it a combination of the two? Because I don't get it.
Can anyone shine a light on that starting 11? Does anyone have anything in? Are we missing something? Because you have to think, don't you, that people who are in the game know more about the game than you do, right? You have to assume that, don't you? That someone like Harry Kewell's been played at the top level, Champions League, international. He's won things at the highest level. But how the fuck did he decide to come up with that starting lineup? Will, Steve, anyone?
It's a tough one, isn't it? I think that, we were talking to the lads before, and I had a bit of a light bulb moment, and then they quickly smashed that light bulb, to be fair. But I wondered what part of Kewell's tactics are that he wants to bring Rowe and Dearnley off the bench, and that is actually part of the game plan, because I can't think of any other reason why they wouldn't start. They've shown that they can play together. I think Rowe, I agree with the comments on Rowe. I don't think he's amazing. I think he's perfectly worthy of a place in the starting lineup. But if you look around that team, he's probably the best when it comes to ball retention that we've actually got in that starting lineup. Which,
he's one of the best footballers on the team, definitely, I think. That doesn't say much necessarily, but... No, and he's probably the closest we've got to someone that can actually control the tempo of a game.
Dearnley's a good outlet. Like you said, I can't believe how Blackwood has gone from not even being... Was he in the squad last week? I can't remember if he was on the bench or not last week.
He's been injured, hasn't he? He's been injured a little while.
So he's come off... He's come from nowhere and gone straight to the starting 11, and you've got Rowe and Dearnley, who are both on the bench, considering that Dearnley's got 4 in 4. And his confidence at the minute must be through the roof in terms of how he's playing.
That's exactly what they were saying on BBC Radio Bolton earlier, just before we came on this. They're saying they can't believe it that they've got someone like Dearnley and all the other people that are threats for goals, and they're not even in the starting lineup. Dearnley's scored midweek. He's up there with his confidence. He's been scoring regularly, and we're leaving him on the bench.
There was some chat, wasn't it? That he was injured in the week, so so he wasn't fully fit. So that's why he was on the bench against Southend. So if you take that through to this week, if he's still not fully fit, and so they want to bring him on for 30 minutes, okay, I sort of get it. Then Rowe's got to start. Yeah. Or Bahambula and Rowe have got to start.
But Blackwood started as well, and if he's come back from an injury as well, he's just got a full night.
But what is Blackwood? What is it? Grant's a left-sided midfielder for me, playing at centre forward. Keeler Dunn's a winger, trying to play him at centre forward. What is Blackwood? I can't work him out. Is he a winger? He's not a centre forward like Rowe. He's not a hold-up man. He's not as quick as Durnley. So on the break. What is he?
He doesn't look like a winger. He certainly doesn't look like a winger. I'm not really seeing that much of him looking like a target man at the minute.
No.
Fair enough. He is feeding off. He's feeding off scraps. I mean, what was interesting today is that when we were using that long ball from Borthwick Jackson, we were sort of using it like we were aiming for Grant. We didn't really seem to be aiming for Blackwood either. So if you're going to use him as a target man, he's a big lad. Then at least aim the ball at him. But we weren't even doing that. So I genuinely don't know. But it just goes back to that thing of we start games. We always start games slowly. We never go off on the front foot from the off.
Correction.
It's always
today. We had the most insightful. Dylan Fage from kickoff took the ball to the edge of the area, very direct. I mean, it went downhill from there.
Yeah.
As Roy predicted on the commentary.
So
but
I disagree with that about never starting on the front foot. Because we did against Bolton.
Well, we did against Bolton. I mean, we did against Bolton, but Bolton's tactics played right into our hands, didn't they? They like to play it out from the back. If you don't press high against the team that likes to play it out from the back, then...
But we also had what was probably our best starting 11 against Bolton. We had Rowe, McElhaney and Bahambula playing sort of as a front three. We had the lad, and forgive me for forgetting his name, he had a good game today. What's he called? Twembe or something?
Tambwe.
Yeah. He played against Bolton and he had a decent game, and he sits just in front of. Well, it was a back three today. So like, there's it's chopping and changing all the time every week, isn't it? There's not any consistency in. It's like he's experimenting. I think one of the dangers you have when you get people like Kewell, like we've already said, who played at the very highest level, they expect too much of the players that they've got. I think at this level, at League Two level. And they want them to do things maybe that they're just not capable of doing. So you need to just settle on something that works for the players you've got. And I don't think we've got to that point yet, have we?
I think, I mean, you can look at it and say, is that the case? But how many times does he do that? And does he sort of get his tactics wrong, get his starting 11 wrong before you just say, it's not that he's expecting too much of the players that he's got. He's just a bad manager. Well,
like you were saying earlier on, though, Steve, you pointed out that it was like you think he wanted Durnley and Rowe to come off the bench. So I thought that the team that he picked to me, it was like he would have been happy to try, and it was a smash and grab job, or he would have been happy to get a point, maybe be down 1-0 and then chuck the lad on at the end and grab a point. So do you think that was his thinking behind the team?
I'd say that's fair. That's how he seems to set it up. But then you go back to what we said at the beginning. Sadly, I'm not expecting us to go and turn Salford over, so he's probably thinking the same thing. I guess that just really explains the state of affairs at Latics. Is we are in such a state now that we're going to tiny poxy little clubs in League Two, not expecting to get a point, not expecting to be able to compete.
We are where we are. We're in the bottom 25% of League Two. That is our.
That's our par now, isn't it?
Yeah, that's
our new par. Yeah,
there's not going to be that many teams below us at the end of the season. And in terms of the budget and the way that we operate and the way that we do things, it's to be expected. It's to be expected that Salford are doing better than us because they've got more money. They're better.
Harrogate as well. Harrogate have got more money than us. Harrogate Town have got more money than us.
But if you've been to Harrogate and you've got Oldham, that wouldn't be that much of a surprise, really.
I'm not talking about the populace of the town. I'm talking about the football club.
No, I know.
I think it's more that they're doing things the right way as well. That's probably the difference. It's not necessarily that they've got. Well, they probably have got more money. We've probably got more capability of earning more money and bringing more money in through the gate, but they do a better job with the money that they do get.
In Harry Kewell's return to the Oldham bench, they fell to a 2-0 defeat against Salford City this weekend. After a late winner on Tuesday against Southend, Oldham came in positive form but decided to put a weak starting 11 out against Salford. The side that have just gone into 9th in the table after the win against Oldham were the much better side throughout the game. Oldham's next challenge is not looking good either, as they face a Cheltenham side who currently sit 3rd in the league. A Cheltenham side which have just beaten Forest Green to keep their 3rd spot in the league. They are looking dangerous this season. Winning 6 games, drawing 1 and losing 3, they have totaled 19 points from the 10 games they've played. Possession of 53% and pass completion of 70%, they are a side which are very good on the ball. Veteran striker Andy Williams is their top goalscorer this season, playing in 8 games, 2 of which off the bench. He has scored 5 goals so far. Their recent addition Alfie May has also been in influential form, making 4 appearances, all of which from the bench, and he has scored 1 goal and got 2 assists. It's also clear that Cheltenham are a very good defensive side. They have kept 6 clean sheets. In their 10 games this season, they have scored a total of 15 goals. Averaging 13 shots per game, 3.9 of these shots are from outside the area. With an average of 1.1 in the 6-yard box, that means that 8 shots per game are inside the penalty area. Looking at their style of play, they play a lot of possession football, attacking mainly through the middle but also a bit down the right hand side. They like to play the offside trap and keep a consistent first 11. That last point is something that Oldham have not done. Oldham seem to change their side every single week and still do not have their set best starting 11. In terms of weaknesses, there is only really one clear weakness that Cheltenham have, and that is something that Oldham may be able to utilise. That is defending against counter-attack. With pace in the side from Zach Durnley and Bahan Bula, and maybe even Conor McElhenney if he's fit, Oldham will be able to get in behind Cheltenham and cause troubles on the counter-attack. Their formation this season is one that is not often used in lower league football, which is a 3-5-2. The 3 centre-backs give them good coverage at the back, with 2 wing-backs/wingers being able to bomb forward and backwards to support the side. They have used this formation in all 10 games this season and have only conceded 7 goals, hammering home the point that they are a very strong defensive side. We mentioned the weaknesses earlier, but the strengths of this side are something that will really concern Oldham. They love and are very strong at attacking set pieces, which is one of Oldham's biggest weaknesses.
It's been such a time now that fullbacks and wingers don't seem to be able to cross the ball. I mean, I've for years now despaired when we were in League One, watching, since probably, name me a decent crosser of a ball since Liddell and David Ayres. Name me one, because I don't think we've had a decent crosser of a ball inside since then, and that shows you how long it is. And what drives me potty is, surely Cameron Borthwick-Jackson, who's played 10 times, is it, for Manchester United's first team in competitive fixtures, surely that boy can cross a ball. Otherwise, he'd have never got anywhere near their starting lineup. And yet he had the ball 3-4 times in the first half and couldn't get it past the first man. And some of them were woeful efforts that you'd have seen in non-league football, in park football. It was awful. And the same on the right-hand side with Dylan Faye. He can't beat the first man either. No. So you literally haven't got anyone who can put the ball in the box.
Fage gets in the box and then falls over.
That was quality. That was brilliant. He showed a nice bit of strength, didn't he? Knocked the lad over, got around him, and then just fell over. And he looked around as if he was like, "What? Who is that?" Like, no, you just fell over, mate. But this is what bothers me, Andy. Like when you say about that, right? I've not really played football for a good few years now, and I was never amazing. But when I was a kid, I used to play Wally with myself all the time, constantly. And all the basic stuff, I could do the basic stuff pretty well because you just do it from a small age. Like, you get to that level, like you said, of being in the first team at Man United, kicking a football, which is all it is, from a wing position into the box, is actually really easy to do. He made it look really, really, really difficult to do.
And some of the opportunities he had to put the ball in the box today, he was literally on his own. There was no one challenging him. He was completely clear. He just had to compose himself and decide whether he was going far post or in the middle, and he just played it along the ground at the near post, and it was easily cleared.
So how do these lads go? Because look, there's no doubt that these lads are talented footballers, league way, way above anything that we're ever been capable of doing. So how do they go from not being able to, from being that to delivering balls like that and having such a poor touch. And I know you say you're playing professional football, there's more pressure on the ball and this, that, and the other. But some of the touches, some of the passing, some of the crossing was just what goes wrong? Is it psychological? Is it group psychology from being part of a team and part of a club which is in the position that Latics is in that just gets under everybody's skin? Where does it all go wrong?
Well, I used to put some of the bad play, especially at home, in the years when we were struggling in League One, down to the pressure we put on our own team sometimes, because we get on our team's back pretty quick and easy because of the years that we've been, depressed at the state of our club. And I used to think sometimes I wish we wouldn't get on our players' backs, but there's no one in the stadiums at the minute. It can't be down to anyone getting. The pressure is entirely their own. It's not. No one's given. No supporters are there. There's no baying supporters calling them. So I just don't understand. It's really frustrating. The other thing that was noticeable today, I don't know if you picked up on it. There were a couple of passages of play where we retained the ball quite well. In fact, our possession stats, I had a quick look before I came on, were better than most of the games we've played in, where we've been lower percentage possession. We actually did quite well today. I think it might have been over half. So we retained the ball quite well a few times, but we did nothing with it. So it just went very, very slowly and pedestrian from left to right. The left side of them bring it back into the centre again, into Whelan, Bahambula, then back across to the right. And then no one was going to beat a man on the right-hand side to put the ball in the box. So it's just this really pedestrian, slow-paced football. Yet, Salford got the ball a few times. You could see them break fast and there was purpose in the passing. And you just think, crying out loud.
See, but that's where our threat is, though. When you've got Durnley on the pitch and McElhaney on the pitch, is drawing a team on. If we're able to keep hold of the ball, draw them on, and then like that pass from Whelan against Southend, brilliant pass, Richie Wellens like almost, where from deep cuts through the lines and Durnley's onto it like a flash. That's one of our strengths, one of our key strengths. That should be how we're trying to play in it, surely, when we've got that strength. But he's on the bench until we're losing.
Exactly. So you come back to the point you made earlier, which is he has to have been setting up for a point or for a smash and grab. He had no intention of going at him in the first half. He would have been happy with 0-0 at half time, and then had to go and set half. That's why he was setting up.
I mean, I said at half time to the lads, like it looked like Salford could go through the gears pretty much whenever they wanted to. I think they were happy to sit, they were happy to let us come at them, but just sort of, protect the dangerous areas so that we didn't get through the lines. And it kind of worked, really. And then when the play got a little bit more expanded, they just went off and scored the second goal. But it was just an abject performance. And you think we won in the week. In reality, I guess time will tell. We'll see how bad Southend actually are. We know that Bolton are bad. It's hard to gauge too much from the actual victories that we've had so far this season.
Yeah, well, we've got Cheltenham on Tuesday, which I suspect we're going to get absolutely spanked against them. Then we've got Scunthorpe, and obviously Scunthorpe's winnable. So
we go to Salford and we expect not to win. We go to Cheltenham and we expect not to win. When we play Harrogate, we'll expect not to win. Harrogate, Cheltenham, and Salford. There's no way Oldham Athletics should not be able to compete against those three teams. No way.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah.
No.
And that's not us thinking we're a massive team or anything. That's not thinking...
Absolutely not.
But compared to Harrogate, we are a massive team. Compared to Salford, we're a massive team. We are, like, in terms of our history, our heritage, our fan base, our stadium. But in terms of our budgets and where we are now and how we're being run, we are inferior to these teams. That's just a fact.
Yeah. And say about budgets, I think we're probably paying a big chunk towards, especially some of the players. You think Borthwick Jackson's come from United. He probably would have had a few other offers, and he's come to play for us. I don't know how much he would have been on the U team there. You've got a certain centre half who's not playing at the moment. He'll be on a nice chunk. McElhaney wouldn't have been cheap. I think we've spent some money, but we've tried to save money in all the wrong places.
You've also got the salary cap being introduced, haven't you now? So you've got limitations on what you can spend, and if your income is affected by virtue of the fact that you don't own your stadium, then you're going to have a smaller budget, I feel. So all these things ultimately bite us on the bum eventually.
Yeah. Well, the salary cap's $1.5 million, which should be enough to give you a team to compete in this division.
I'm obviously none of us know what it is, but I'm led to believe we're not spending that. We're spending less than that.
Yeah, I think. I
believe so.
We probably are. Yeah.
You see, spending. You could have one standout player who takes up a good chunk of your salary budget because you want him or whatever. Presumably, the sensible thing to do is to try and spread that out, fairly evenly amongst players of a consistent standard, so that you have a good squad of consistently good players. That is obviously the wise way to spend that money. You might have 1 or 2, 3 players who are earning more than the rest, but you need a consistently good squad, don't you? There's no point having 3, 4, 5, 6 good players and then the rest are just making up the numbers because you can't afford any more due to your salary cap. So maybe in reference to what you said there, Will, maybe there's a bit of that going on in terms of that's why our squad is as thin as it is.
Not that thin, it's just the quality.
Yeah.
If you look at, I don't know about you, but players like Durnley, when we had Durnley on loan season before last, was it? I thought there was a player in there. I could see something quick, decent on the ball, could seem to finish. He wasn't. Then he went off the boil a bit, and then we signed him last season. I can see signing players like that. I've got no problem with. They've got the pedigree of the youth system at United, so they should be well trained, well coached. They're going to be kids, so they're not going to be not turned into men yet. So you have to give them time. But the players like Durnley, Whelan, Borthwick, Jackson, on face value, I've got no problem with those types of signings. But they have to be supplemented, surely, with seasoned pros at the same time, because you can't just run a team on fancy Dan kids from under 23 Premier League, that have been rejected. So there's got to be surely the recruitment strategy from a director of football or a sporting director surely has to have some strategy around it. So that is, for the sake of argument, 24 players in the squad, 6 players rejected from Premier League teams at kids, 6 of your own youth team through, 6 seasoned professionals, and then 6 mid-range professionals.
You're verging on something far too close to common sense there, Andy. That sounds far too reasonable. What you also failed to put in there was how many French lads, what the quota for that is, and how many of Mo's mates are in there, and you missed quite a few things that are obviously more relevant to our actual strategy. But yeah, you make a great point, and also it leads us on to the hashtag FREEWHEATZ with a Z, because
we're edgy.
Yeah, exactly. Because you're absolutely right. Like, there is a lack of. We're not allowed to say "ding" experienced midfielder. How we had this conversation, things that we weren't allowed to say week in, week out. But Andy's led us onto it perfectly. There is a lack of experienced heads, experienced professionals. We talk about it every week. It's not this week, but I see that Push the Boundary this week have decided to up the ante in terms of the Wheater situation, and I guess you've done that. If anyone who's listening has not been on Twitter and not seen the FREEWHEATZ, hashtag FREEWHEATZ with a Z campaign, basically what you're saying is there is no excuse to keep an experienced defenders. Experienced midfielders on the brain. Steve, tell us about give us a lowdown on the Wheats thing.
Well, yeah, I mean, I did a bit of looking at the squad that we've got. And when you look at, I think David Wheater has played, and I looked purely just to make it easy, I looked at league games in the top 4 divisions, just to sort of make it a balanced view. And I think David Wheater's played 400. He's played over 400 games, I think, league games of football in the top 4 divisions. And I think that is comfortably more than anyone else in the squad. You can't treat a professional in the way that he's been treated by the club. By all intents and purposes, he's not really done anything wrong. And we've done our research into what the situation is before we've actually gone to print on anything. And it seems as though he's been asked to take a pay cut. He's accepted furlough, so he's been getting his furlough wages, but the club haven't been paying him what he's been due other than that. The
top up.
Yeah. Well, it's not the top up because I don't think the club were actually topping any of the wages up. But I think there was missed wages before furlough, and I think since the furlough has ended as well, I think there's been missed wages in terms of in terms of David Wheater. So we did our research on that, and we just feel as though something has to change here. It's not the first person that has been frozen out by the club, and I'm sure if this situation is allowed to play out, that he won't be the last person. And it's another experienced pro that has been sidelined. And it's not only the fact that, we don't think that David Wheater is going to be the silver bullet here to sort of get us into the playoffs. All we're saying is that we want David Wheater to be made available to the manager for selection. If Harry Kewell doesn't pick him, then that is entirely up to Harry Kewell. He sees him day in, day out in training. He knows whether he's going to be good enough to improve that side or not. I think most fans would probably have a view on that. It's also things like in training. He's training with the youth team. You look at the way that George Edmondson developed playing next to Peter Clark, training next to him every single day. What experience could these young kids, your Harry Clarks, your Hamers, Jamesons, your Barnetts, people like that, what could they get from training with David Wheater? Just from his experience that they can take into a match day. So it's not just the fact that what he's doing out on the pitch, it's everything else. That face around the dressing room, the experience that he brings. That's why we've done it. And we also want to sort of try and prove that fans do have a say in what happens at this football club, and that, we just want the club to listen to that.
The other thing on top of that is we're paying his wages. We contractually have to pay his wages. So basically we're spending thousands and thousands of pounds a month on a player that can't play. Meanwhile, we're juggling with our league status, losing to Salford, and a player like David Wheater isn't allowed to play. And you've got to think, he's got to improve the team. You've got to have fewer errors, fewer goals let in if he's in the team.
Even organisationally, he has to strengthen the team.
So I run a business, right? And I've been dealing with furlough and the jobs support scheme with the employees that work for the business that I run. Some of those conversations that you have with employees, you can't force someone to go onto one of those schemes. You have to agree that they will. They have to agree to that process. And if you ask them to take a pay cut, they have to agree also. And I've done all those things over the last few months. And some conversations have been really easy and some conversations have been quite difficult based on individual personal circumstances. Some people have been very articulate and explained to me why they can't take the cut in money that the business would like them to take for the reasons that they describe. So in this particular instance, as an employer dealing with an employee, the bit that I can't quite comprehend, I can understand the company's position, Oldham Athletics' position, saying, look, this is a global pandemic, once in a 100-year event, and we haven't got any income to pay your rather princely wages in full. So we're going to put you on the furlough scheme. And he says, okay, that's fine, but I want a top up in wages. Surely there's a negotiation to be had there where the two parties find a compromise position. That's what I've had to do. That's what many employers up and down the country have had to do, is find a compromise. Each individual has compromised. It would appear on face value that in this instance, the club are not willing to compromise at all. It is either take the terms that the club give you or you're not in the squad anymore. That's the thing that feels, the treatment of staff feels really bad, doesn't it?
And that's it. It's almost like saying, it's a double whammy. We're saying, we're not going to give you what you're entitled to, and we're also going to banish you. So it's like, how's that fair? Saying we're not going to pay you and you're also going to train with the kids. It's just wrong.
Steve, I think you'll find that if you read the comprehensive and very well-rounded statement that the club actually gave on the website about this situation, then you will discover, you'll discover absolutely fuck all, because it didn't tell us anything. But this is where this, like Andy's saying, it is a private matter to some degree between the employer and the employee. It's not up to us to know the ins and outs of all this stuff. It's not our business to know David Wheater's wages. Andy's not telling us the details of his experiences with his own employees because it's none of our business. But when it comes to a football club, this is why football and business, football is a business, but it's different. It's not black and white. Because David Wheater not being in our squad and our team is directly affecting the success on the pitch. And we deserve more of an explanation than the one that we've got from the club. And like you say, Will, he is being paid by the club. He should be playing. And the club...
He's off furlough now, and his contract stipulates what we pay him. So we'll be paid full whack now.
Yeah, and it's down to the communication. Harry Kewell has fudged it. He's avoided talking about it. He's making stuff up. That doesn't help. It's a mess. And it's just another example of how we mess these things up, and it becomes something that you feel then has pushed the boundary. You need to bring as a campaign. This shouldn't be. We shouldn't have got to this point, should we?
No, definitely not. And let's make it clear as well that this situation with David Wheater wouldn't be any different if we won the first 10 games of the season. Where we are in the league doesn't justify the treatment that he's had, I think, but it's definitely exacerbated by the fact that we are where we are in the league, and yet again we've conceded another 2 goals. We played 10 games, we've conceded 20 goals, which is just crazy. You're screaming out for somebody to come in and shore that defence up. When
you look at the amount of goals we've scored, if we could stop leaking them in the other end, then we're a threat. We're mid-table. We're comfortable at least. I played centre half when I was a lad, when I was a kid. It's that one position. I was a very vocal footballer. The people listening to this say you're a pain in the ass on the football pitch, and they'd be right. But that position of centre half, you organise everything from there. You orchestrate everything from that position. You have an experienced head in that place. Not only you're orchestrating your midfield, you're telling people where they should be. You're reading the game and you're seeing who needs to be where. And that's what David Wheater brings. He would bring that experience where he's pulling the strings and he's orchestrating what's going on the football pitch. And that's why they make players better around them.
It's like having another manager or a coach on the pitch.
It is. And also what you do is you where those other players on the pitch have a hole where they don't see it, they don't read the game, you read it for them and you tell them and you compensate for their inadequacies and their, in the areas of the game that they need to build on. It's such a shame. Like you would have, if you ask anyone who's not an Oldham fan to run their eyes down the squad at Oldham, say, name a player that you recognise, a name that you recognise. There's only going to be one that anyone would recognise, and it's David Wheater. And so it's very, very, very frustrating.
I have to say though, whilst I've retweeted the hashtag and I'm completely on board with it, do any of you guys think it will change the way in which the owners of our club operate? Because I don't. Unfortunately.
I think we're probably skeptical about whether it may work. We would see this for the owners as a chance to say, we listen to you. We know you're not happy. We know you want him back in the squad. It's within our gift to do it. So, okay, let's do it. We'll show you that we can turn over a new leaf here and we're going to turn things round. If they do that, okay, great. Let's get him back in the squad. Let's move on. Let's work on the next thing we've got an issue with. And if they don't do that, then, well, it's just another act of contempt towards a fan base, which have already been ignored for the last couple of years, and you continue to do it.
Yeah.
I think you give them opportunity after opportunity after opportunity to say, we want to do well at this club. We want the right thing for this club. But fans can only give them so many opportunities, and every week somebody reaches that tipping point where they say, this is too much. I can't support this anymore.
That's a great point, Steve, because what you're doing there with Push the Boundary is saying, look, this is an issue that the fans have, and we're presenting it to you. And then you're putting the ball in their court and saying, it's up to you now what you want to do about it. If they might want to come back and say, actually, you lot are all very wrong on this. This is actually the situation with David Wheater, and they can go off and tell us whatever it is. But at least it prompts them to do something. Because all we're doing is reading into this really crappy little statement that they gave us. So I think you're right. Just put it to them. You're just kind of putting it up, representing something which is an issue that the fans have, and you're just putting it to the club. And then, like you said, they can either do something positive with that, or they can just ignore it.
Yeah.
Or they'll just release him.
Yeah. We didn't want him to misconstrue the FREEWHEATZ as to just let him go. We were like, no, sorry. Can we retract that? Can we call it something else, please?
After the Cheltenham game, there is a break from league football for Oldham. They will be playing Hampton and Richmond in the FA Cup. Hampton and Richmond is a side that Oldham are actually familiar with, meeting almost to the day 2 years ago in the FA Cup first round. It was under Frankie Bunn that Oldham almost went out if it weren't for goals from Rob Hunt and Callum Lang late on in that game to see them go through. The National League Southside will be hosting Oldham in the 12:45 kickoff next Sunday. Their manager Gary McCann will be hoping that they can beat Oldham this time, and no late heroics can save the latter. In terms of their stats this season, they have played 17 games, a lot more than Oldham. They have won 9 of these games, drawn 4 and lost 4. They average 2 goals a game and also average 1.1 goals conceded. Their top goal scorer is Nico Muir, scoring 2 goals. The striker has played in 6 of their games. Another side without a consistent starting 11. This is due to the amount of games Hampton and Richmond have played this season. They're not in the best of form, and it is a side that Oldham should, on paper, be beating easily. But with the uncertainty around the starting 11 and the way the team has been playing recently, it's a real worry for fans going into this game, as there is a genuine concern that Hampton and Richmond could beat Oldham. If results don't go the Latics' way against Cheltenham, there could be a change in manager by the weekend. There is that much uncertainty around this squad at the moment that Harry Kewell may not be in charge come the FA Cup game. The Oldham side will be looking to use the game to pick up form and to start a surge going up the league table, but it is a real concern right now, with Oldham only being saved so far in terms of league position by sides like Bolton and Southend struggling themselves. It might be a nice distraction in the FA Cup game. Oldham really need to turn their form around before serious worries happen before Christmas about their league position and the relegation zone.
So, on the field performances are directly affected with off the field issues. And Andy, you have a few views on, you tweeted something about Simon Blitz and what was going on in that area, and you and Will were having a little chat on Twitter.
For me, since the 90s, right? Simon Blitz arguably is the most capable, successful businessman, probably the wealthiest owner we've had during that time as well. He's been arguably the best placed individual to have changed the fortunes of this football club. I say what I'm about to say, I'm going to predicate with, I've partly thank him for saving us in 2004 when we were nearly liquidated. I don't know how many other options there were, but him and the other two saved us from liquidation. And so I have to bear that in mind. But, and this is where the book comes for me, is when he walked in 2010, because liquidity had dried up at the banks following a credit crunch, and his businesses clearly were feeling the pinch. He walked away with all of the hard assets, siphoned off into his own businesses, and left us in the hands of one of the three, who was the least capable and the least wealthy of the three amigos. And that ultimately is the point at which we were consigned to forever, in the short and medium term, to being a club in crisis, ultimately, because we were always borrowing to pay the bills. And Corney got lucky once or twice with a cup run or two that sort of kept the wolves from the door. But ultimately, we were going under Corney because he wasn't wealthy enough to look after the club. And that ultimately leads to us, of all the suit, I often hear people say, "Well, look at all the people, swooning around. The people still trying to buy Bury in their hour of need. There's people trying to buy Wigan. There's people trying to buy this club. There's always people trying to buy football clubs." Andy, they say to me, and every single time I say to them, "But each of those football clubs they're trying to buy own their land, or their stadium, or have a training ground facility. They have fixed assets within that limited company which are worth buying. We don't." And so there is no capable, sensible, successful businessman or woman would ever have come near us to buy us when the hard assets have been stripped from the club. And that ultimately was a millstone around our neck, because that's why Corney couldn't sell it. "I'll sell to the right person," he said. I mean, I never believed that, and I'm sure lots of people didn't. He was going to sell to anybody that would give him some money for it. And the only person that was going to give him some money for a limited company that was worthless and had no fixed assets was an idiot. So ultimately, we were going to end up in the hands of a Walter Mitty fantasist living out his dream for his brother in their reality football manager world, throwing players in from their network of agency contacts. It was just destined to be a monumental clusterfuck. And I didn't see any other way around it. And Will will know, I was calling it very, very early. I thought it was a bad bad thing that had happened to us being bought by a former football agent. And I don't take any pleasure at all in saying that I was right. But
what's the plan?
Well, yeah, I mean, what is the plan? So we all want.
No, I'm just saying about you at the start when Abdallah took over. You were saying,
sorry, yeah. That was just my.
You were right.
That was just my way, and when the blues of trying to call out, asking him what was the plan. So if you come in and bought a company like Oldham Athletic 2004 Limited and doesn't have any fixed assets, you've got to make some decisions about you either try and you had a lease on the ground for 30 years, whatever it was. You either try and work with the landlord, you either try and buy the landlord's assets, or you either try and move away to a new ground. The training facilities aren't owned by the club either. The council own. What does he do about that? These are the types of things that if you're running a business, like I would be making decisions about my business, not the one I don't own it, but I've still got to help make decisions. He's going to make those decisions. All his decisions in the early days were just, I'm going to flood it with a load of foreign footballers, which if one or two of them had stuck, maybe that might have been okay in the short term, but he still had to make medium to long term decisions. But he self-evidently wasn't making any decisions about the medium and long term. In fact, he hadn't even understood what he was buying at the outset, self-evidently, in some later interviews, or he gave the impression he wasn't clear, or it was just an embarrassment, really, that he hadn't got a clue. But this is the thing for me. If I come back to Blitz, because I'll try and come to a close on this comment now, so you can respond. But we end up talking about Abdallah's incompetence, of which there is a lot. But Blitz is the reason we've got Abdallah. Corney sold him to Abdallah, but Corney was only going to be able to sell the club to Abdallah or someone like Abdallah because Blitz had got the assets. And because Blitz's plan was to build houses all over us to get the money back. I concede he spent some money in the early days. And he had a bit of a go at it around 2007, 8 and 9 and all that. I give him credit for those years. But once he made his decision to cut and run, it was clear what his plan was then, to me at least, which was to yield as much profit back out of his fixed assets, our fixed assets, for his personal bank account.
But it wasn't, for what you're saying there, it wasn't a profit. He was trying to recoup what he had invested in the football club.
Correct.
So from a business point of view, from his own, then that makes sense. So it's like I've kept the club alive. I've invested this much money. These are the conditions in which I'm going to retract my interest so that I can recoup some of my losses. And Simon, you get on with that. But what you're saying is you're not blaming him as such, but you're saying that he created the conditions under which the current situation.
Yeah, I mean,
to grow.
He's done what he's done, and he's well within. He's not done nothing illegal. He's well within his rights to do what he's done. It doesn't make me feel warm about the man, though. So when some people currently talk about Blitz, arguably in quite glowing terms, I shake my head and think, how can you? I don't like what he's done because he's cut and run. It's his limited company, so he can do what he wants with him, or he could do what he wanted at the time. But ultimately, in on the other podcast he appeared on, the All Latics podcast, which Brooke and Smedley and a few other people did. He was on there, wasn't he, a few months back? Mm-hmm. And he mentioned on there, and I knew this anyway through a friend of mine who knew information about what they got to in the past. They had tried to buy Luton and Hull and one other club before landing on Latics. And I know one of the reasons that they didn't buy Hull was because Boothferry Park didn't come as part of the deal. Because Boothferry Park was, with no sense of irony, had been stripped from the club by the former owner, David Lloyd, the tennis player and gym owner. So that was no longer part of the club. So they didn't want to buy Hull because they didn't get land. So it was self-evident once they walked into Boundary Park, or once into Latics, and said to the council, can we have the land at the same price that you bought it off Braley for in 99? And they went, yeah, sound. Then they were like, whoa, excellent. We can play at Football Manager for a few years. And then if it all goes belly up, we'll just build houses over it anyway. And that's what grates at me, because those are the conditions that see us unable to compete with Salford, Harrogate and Cheltenham. Rant over, sorry.
No, it was a good rant. It was a good rant, and you made a lot of good points, and you articulated it in such a way that it was quite easy to digest. So I now put it to push the boundary, lads, to comment on that. If you got any
it's not a push the boundary thing. It's a will thing here. Now, I'm no fan of Blitz, and people know that. But you talk about, and we've discussed this before about you think it's a millstone round the neck because we don't own the ground and things. We know that Blitz was asking £6 million for the ground, and it sounds a lot of money. Sounds overpriced. Let's call it £3 million. So if you've got to finance £3 million, how much is that going to cost you a year to finance that? Yeah. So say 10%, call it 5%. That's 150 grand a year just to finance it, and that's on a good deal financing. The rent is 100 grand a year, and you get the use of the North Stand and all the facilities in that. So already you're 50 grand a year better off by not owning the ground.
But then if you own the North Stand, and then you've got all the non-match day income that you could generate from that, conference facilities, weddings, birthdays, bar mitzvahs, whatever you want to run in them, you don't get to do any of that because you're only getting match day income. And
you trust the current ownership to make money out of that, do you?
Oh, no, I don't. And that's my point, is we wouldn't have had the current ownership had it all been sold at a reasonable price in the first instance. So when Blitz decided he wanted to walk in 2010, that's fine, no problem. Sell the assets, all of them, lock, stock and barrel, to someone who would buy all of them.
But he was convinced by Corny. Corny convinced Blitz that he wanted to stay and he could make it work, and that's the problem.
I mean, right? So Corny may well have wanted that, but convincing Blitz in inverted commas, Blitz didn't need any convincing. Will Blitz wanted to take the assets and walk. He wasn't, and that's my point. Is it was all part of his grand plan anyway. Ultimately, which is if I get bored of this, I've got the land, so who cares? And that ultimately is what was always his backup plan. And his backup plan was forced upon him partly because of the credit crunch, because of the financial crash, liquidity drying up,
and the council.
Yeah, and a myriad of other things that affected his sort of affection for it. But then that brings me on to if I can move on. Can I move on?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So then my next point is, what do we need? We need an owner that owns all of it. But my opinion is, we need an owner that owns all of it, that has some connection to the Northwest. Ideally, a Latics fan, but the chances of a Latics fan, an independent Latics fan, being wealthy enough to own the club is slim. But I feel the other issue that is a problem to us, or has been a problem to us, is, again, since the 90s, we haven't had, Chris Moore was from Stockport, wasn't he? But I guess the closest you get, where he was, well, obviously he was a criminal in the end. So I'm not using him as a good example, but all our owners have had no connection to the area, none, absolutely none. 3 North London gentlemen based in the States, a former football agent who's a Moroccan national, lives in Dubai. And I don't think that ultimately is a good thing. Now, I'm not saying that I care about the nationality, and the nationality is irrelevant to me. But if you look at all successful clubs of a similar size, forget the big behemoths, the Uniteds, the Cities, the Chelseas, who've all got foreign owners with no connections to their areas. Forget all of those. Think about small town or small city football clubs. And I can read you a list out if you like. So you've got Brentford, Matthew Benham, Brighton, Tony Bloom, Middlesbrough, Steve Gibson, Bristol City, Steve Lansdowne, Preston North End, Trevor Hemmings, the Coates family for Stoke, Clive Nates, Lincoln, Simon Sadler, Blackpool, Karen Shanahan, Vale, a consortium in Luton, Save Luton. All of these people, all of them, come from the community in which the club they own. But they may not be fans of the club, so a lot of them are, but I think that matters, because if the people running the club are anchored in the region, then they have more at play.
I think that is, it doesn't do any harm. You look at someone like Leicester, I know that they're much bigger, but they've got Thai owners, but what they've done is they've managed, whoever they've brought in within the club, have that understanding of Leicester culturally or whatever. Do you know what I mean? So they've run the club and they've taken it to a successful level. I would prefer I would prefer the setup that you were expressing there. I think there does need to be an understanding of the local culture of understanding the area, the how the area is economically, culturally, historically, and all these kind of things. Definitely, they don't necessarily need to come from that area, but the people that they employ to run the club need to understand that, I would argue.
Yeah, I'm like I said, the nationality is really incidental at the end of the day. But yes, of course, the Leicester owners have done an amazing job, but they're a club arguably that are bigger than us, and they're in a different league stratospherically to us.
Much bigger than us, but they were playing against us in League One a few years ago, and then they won the they won the Premiership. So what they did there was incredible.
Yeah, absolutely amazing. But I mean, realistically, if you think about the catchment of Leicester, and
I'm not comparing Leicester to Oldham. Don't get me wrong.
No, I know. But I guess what I'm getting at is you're unlikely to get as successful and competent businessmen as the Leicester owners wanting to buy Latics on the basis that you've got United in City 5 minutes down the road, and that ultimately we're never going to get that. A Russian oligarch or a Middle Eastern oil baron are not going to buy Latics. So we need to think sensibly, or we should be thinking sensibly about the type of owner that we might want, and I think people with some understanding or based in the local area would be of benefit. And like I said, I'm not expecting us to be, not that any of us here expecting us to be in the Premier League. Those days are long gone. We just want to be able to compete in the lower leagues of English football.
But is this your plea then to local people with loads of money to come out and buy the... you and I have had this conversation before. Is there has to be competent business people in the community of Oldham and the Northwest. Well, I mean, Manchester as a Greater Manchester as a catchment has got a lot of incredibly successful people in there, and I think that it would be daft of us not to try to meet as many people as possible that have an interest in sport and football, and maybe find one or two Latics fans in there somewhere that might have some transferable skills that could work in a consortium to help us in the future when a day may come where we need a consortium to help us in the future.
But I think this process has begun, I think, because I say this every week, that we need to make Oldham Athletic more investable. And by doing what Push the Boundary are trying to do, arguably taking up the mantle where Trust Oldham, failed, in terms of galvanising the fans and showing potential investors that there is a lot of goodwill and there are numbers behind Oldham Athletic. That's from a fan's point of view. That's what we need to do, innit? Because like you said, there are issues in terms of the assets, the stadium, all that stuff that you articulated before, and you put it really well, and you made a really good point of made it really understandable of where we're at. But we are where we're at. So whether it's Corney's fault, whether it's Blitz's fault, whether it's Abdallah's fault, whether it's just history, and it's evolved to where we are. We are where we are. So we can't do anything about that now. All we can do is try, from a fan's point of view, to make the club more investable, so that those people are looking at it and saying, all right, the fans of this club are there, even if they're not buying the season tickets, even if they're not turning up week in, week out. It's kind of like being fans off the pitch, away from the stadium. Like, I don't see what else we can do really at this stage, Andy. What do you think?
From my perspective, and I've said this to Push the, but I think what Push the Boundary lads have done in the last 1 year. So is it a year today, or is it a year yesterday? Year today. Oh, Halloween. Was it Halloween when he started?
It was pretty scary, to be honest.
So what the Push the Boundary lads have done inside a year, I think is amazing. So the way that they've connected with a fan base, that they're open and honest communication style. They're also the fact that they do things quickly has been amazing, and it's galvanised a lot of us, myself included, to finding the passion again that maybe had waned a little bit, and the apathy that had set in for myself. I've maybe got a bit of energy back, and I've listened to all your podcasts bar the first two, Matt, and I thought the Stockport lads and the Leyton Orient chap, Matt, who's called Matt as well, wasn't he, were great as well, because they explained their experiences, and they both said things like, you've got to start raising money, you've got to get some energy into it, and you've got to you'll get knockers, but you've got to just carry on. And I've listened to some of those things and thought, yeah, well, what are we doing? We're not doing anything. So I think that we should be trying to find people in the Oldham area, or Oldham Thames side, or the east side of Manchester itself, with skills that could be of benefit to us in the future, because I fear one day we might need them, and I think we need to be ready at a day. Because what's clear is the current owner isn't going to sell, in my opinion. He's certainly not going to sell.
No.
Certainly not going to sell unless he gets a princely sum for it to cover his costs, which isn't going to happen. So we just need to be ready for either when he walks or when he's forced to leave, because administration or liquidation is looming, because I don't see any other option than those probably. I think we just need to be ready. It's
about controlling what you can control. I think as a group and as a fan base, you can only do what you can do. And I think when that comes to things like, if it is getting someone local to do it, if you've got, to come and run the club, or to sort of invest in the club or whatever, or if it's the fans looking to do something, do you look at doing something that runs concurrently to what the club are doing? And we say, what, you go about your merry business. We'll keep an eye on you, and we'll prod you when we're not happy with what you're doing, which unfortunately at the moment is quite a lot. And the fans in the meantime will galvanise and do something separately. You look at the situation with Wigan. That came completely out of the blue in terms of their administration, and all of a sudden the fans had to be galvanised to raise X amount of money. And they did, to be fair. Was it around 700,000-800,000 or something like that they raised? And they raised it in a short amount of time. If the worst comes to the worst, and this will bring me on to another point, if the worst comes to the worst, then we have to be ready for what is about to happen. And I'd rather have a head start on that than have to start from scratch in terms of whatever that action may be that we need to take. But
see, I think therefore we're saying the same thing ultimately, which is, you've got to, I love the FREEWHEATZ campaign, putting pressure on the club to react to things that we're unhappy with. But ultimately, the main thing I think we've got to think about in the future is, if we get relegated, and we have to say there's a reasonable chance of that today, or if the club goes to the wall because the owner decides he's not going to fund it anymore, or if the taxman comes after him and us, then the club could be in administration, or even could be placed in the hands of the liquidators, which is worse, because then the club will be liquidated and we'll be starting a phoenix. But whatever it is that comes in one of those scenarios, we need to be ready to make a move pretty sharpish after that. And so I think trying to find as many people with competent skills to be involved in that now, so that they're ready when that day sadly comes, I think is no bad thing.
No, and that's where the trust has dropped the ball over the years, because rather than having that network and building slowly but surely membership and keeping it ticking over and realising the importance of having the trust in the good times as well as the bad. Because that's the thing that I got from when I spoke to Matt at Leyton Orient. It's easy to galvanise people when you're struggling, but it's not so easy to keep the trust membership and all that kind of thing going when things are good. But fundamentally, that's what you need. That's why fan ownership, places like the Bundesliga and stuff like that is encouraged, because you keep fans on side all the time. You keep fans investing in the club and the trust and the infrastructure that is there to support the club when it's struggling is there in the good times, so that it can be called upon and is needed in the bad times. That's where we've missed this opportunity with having the trust, with having the 3% and all that. It's been missed. And when the trust do come on the podcast, and when I am able to speak to them, that's going to be one of the fundamental questions is, how has it got things so wrong? Why have you allowed a situation where Push the Boundary have come to fill that void? And now that Push the Boundary have come to fill that void, what are you going to do as an organisation to support what they're doing, to incorporate what they're doing, and to help galvanise everything under the one banner, which is what we need. Even if Push the Boundary and Trust Oldham remain separate, they still need to be working towards a common goal.
Well, didn't the Stockport lads say that they had many factions of their fan base in different groups, and they all came together ultimately under one cooperative eventually to work towards the greater good? And I found that passage of that podcast particularly interesting, because obviously I was unfamiliar with the details of their club, and that ultimately feels like what we might have to do at some stage here. Although from where I'm sitting, Push the Boundary have got the majority of supporters supporting their cause than maybe the very small band of fans that are close to the owner or even the trust themselves. But still, one might assume that we need to try and get everybody together at some stage, or sadly we might have to get everyone together at some stage if it goes belly up.
And I think the key thing with that as well is it's getting those people together at a stage when you're all willing to admit that there's an issue. To sit around a table and discuss what happens next, everybody has to be on the same page. As to, when we've said this to the club on numerous occasions, when we've sent correspondence to them or when we've seen them in person, when we've said, listen, you've got fans here who want desperately to support the club. If we've got problems, then tell us we've got problems. Don't tell us everything's fine. And then we all wake up one day and realise that we're in £10 million worth of debt and we've got a week to save the club. I think we'd all rather be in a situation where you go, listen, guys, this isn't a great situation. We might need some help. Fans would rally around that. They won't rally around being told lie after lie after lie after, or mistruth, and being sped a yarn over what's happening. We need, if there's an issue, then we need to know about it now so we can do something about it.
Yeah.
The only organisation which is set up to receive the kind of funding that we could be paying into is the trust. So, Push the Boundary is not set up to receive. I've had this thing in my head where it's 125 years of Oldham Athletic, right? We're in the danger of going out of business. If every, say, 6,000 Oldham Athletic fans contributed £125 this year, we'd have £750,000 in the bank. 6,000 of us went to Anfield, right? We could, if you did that over a year, it's £10.42 a month, right? If you got local businesses involved, you could get that up to £1 million quite easily, right? Push the Boundary can't take that money. I can't take that money. The only organisation that can take that money is the trust. Nobody wants to give money to the trust. Nobody trusts the trust. So we're in a very, very difficult situation. But I feel that we could do something like that if we were all galvanized and we were all on the same page and we worked all these little things out. It's very, very, very frustrating because people, like I've had the podcast about loyalty where I spoke to Professor James Reed a couple of weeks ago. We're divided. How do you support? And I listened to The Price of Football. We've got Kieran Maguire coming on the podcast in a couple of weeks. Listening to his podcast, he was talking about, they were talking to Newcastle fans. They support Newcastle United. They don't support Mike Astley's Newcastle United. And that's what we've got going on here. People support Oldham Athletic, but they don't support Abdallah's Oldham Athletic. But we still want to be able to put the money and the support into something that keeps us alive.
Absolutely, and sort of as I've said to the Push the Boundary guys, is I'm based in London, so I haven't had a season ticket for many seasons, but I go to plenty of the games, a handful of home games a season away, and quite a few away. But at this moment in time, I'm not putting any money into the club. I've not bought a season ticket. I've not bought any shirts for my kids. I'm not travelling to watch the games. I stopped putting money into player share a while ago. I put money into that because I felt like it was a sensible place to put some. I don't actually have a vehicle to place any money. I'm not particularly wealthy, but I would be very happy to put 125 quid in, or maybe even a little bit more, if it was going to a cause that I felt was ready and ready for the day when we needed it. If it were possible, just for me to come back full circle on where we started it though, is let's say we get a consortium of people with transferable skills that could be ready, willing, and able with a pot and a fund of money to help us through a very dark day when a very dark day comes. We may also want at that stage to be talking to Mr. Blitz because we may be wanting to say to him, right, come on now, time's time here. You've had your fun. We need our ground. We need it back.
Imagine if 6,000, 7,000, 8,000 Oldham fans said, we've raised £1 million here. we're at the table.
Yeah.
We want our ground back. We want investors into the football ground. We've put our money where our mouth is. Imagine the impact that would have.
Yeah.
That would be phenomenal.
Yeah.
That's kind of like the thing that I'm not working on, if you like, the idea that I've got in the background, and I'm waiting to sort of bring it to the forefront, and I'm being very patient, and I've not mentioned it a lot of the time on the podcast because I'm not ready to do anything like this and push the boundary. That's not what they're for. And the trust, I would want the trust on side, and it's all very kind of, but imagine, forgetting all that, imagine we could do something like that as a fan base. We could raise £1 million and say, look how desperate we are to get our football club back on track. We're putting our money where our mouth is. Let's move it forward.
Just like you said, just like Blackpool did, and then now they've got a fan owner. Just like Luton had to do at one stage, and they've got a consortium of local business people, which is called whatever, Luton Holdings or something. Yeah, that ultimately I think would be the thing that we should think about aiming towards. Forget some very, very multi-millionaire rich owners, unlikely to land, but we're going to have to probably prepare for another solution.
And I think what we need to do is, look, £1 million might be pie in the sky, right? But Oldham Athletic has put up with mediocrity for far too long. I'm not going to go out and say, let's raise 100 grand, let's raise 200 grand, let's raise £1 million. And no matter how difficult that might, we might not get there, but there has to be this ambition at Oldham. There has to be thinking beyond mediocrity and being shit.
we need to stop. We need to stop being grateful that we've got a club.
Yeah,
and actually do something about it.
We need to be ambitious about what we can achieve.
That's also one of the things I heard. What Carl Evans say, I think might have been in your podcast actually, Mark. Did Carl Evans say, I met the Push the Boundary lads and I asked them where they thought the club was, and they said mid-table in League One, and I was pleased to hear that because I thought that once you've had a sniff of the Premier League, you might be saying he said something along those lines. I listened to it and I sort of gave him, cut me a bit of slack, thinking I sort of understand the point he's making, but it was mildly condescending. But then it made me go back and look at it, and actually over the course of our 125-year history, right, we're somewhere like the 43rd to the 46th, like most successful club, right, on league standings, that is. So that places us somewhere between bottom half of the Championship and the top half of League One. That's a 125-year sample.
That's the problem, though. It's a 125-year sample. Football is a much different game now.
No, of course it is. Of course it is.
People like Bristol City that were paying like £10 million a year in wages to get out of League One.
Yeah, no. Of course it is. I guess all I'm trying to say is with the right level of ownership and ambition, and trying to corral the people of Oldham to support their club and get behind something they can be proud of the way it's run, proud of the way it's anchored in the community, proud for what it does for the community. Then the chances are we could level out around our 125-year par, in my opinion, which is to be competing at the top end of League One and every now and again getting into the Championship, maybe trying to stay there for a few years.
But the thing is, right, is rather than waiting for Abdallah or an owner to come in and say, we're going to take you to the Championship, and then you go, yay, okay, how long is that going to take? And they say 5 years or 10 years, right, okay, yay. And then we're just going to sit there and wait for that to happen, and then we're going to get really pissed off when it doesn't happen. That's no use. We're no use in that dynamic. Our situation needs to be, let's get Oldham into the Championship. What are we going to do about it? How are we going to do that? We are the supporters of this club. We are the finances of this club at a very, very basic level. Obviously, you need additional finance, but we are the ones that can put that money in. We're the ones that can change the attitude and change the whole kind of feeling, the whole spirit. And it's up to us. We've got a voice because we're putting this podcast out every week. And hopefully that'll infect other people. And then hopefully what we'll do in terms of, you can't argue with Push the Boundary. You lads are doing it. You're doing things. You're being very practical about it. But let's take that on. Let's take that on, and let's not be a mediocre club anymore. We are Oldham. Everyone talks about potential when it comes to Oldham Athletic, and that potential is never ever realised. So if those people, external forces can't do it, then internal forces, i.e. the fans, need to do it, don't they? It's not easy. And look, I know it's fucking, it's it's very ideological, and that's just the way I am. But it will never be a reality unless we make it a reality.
My view is that as I've said to the Push Bounce lads, and as you're saying, Matt, is we need to raise money now in preparation for D-Day when it arrives. And we need to network with as many competent local business people as possible so that when the day comes, we've got a consortium of people ready, capable and willing to run a football club in its crisis hour. And we use those funds to set off on a new direction of consortium-based local business people / fan ownership of some description. And we're going to need to try to raise enough funds over a period of time to make sure we have a home that we can call our home, that we own, and a football club that has that base to run from. And that's ultimately what we've got to, I think that's what we've got to start thinking about. Because if we start thinking about, let's try and get Abdallah to change his ways so that he runs it properly, I think we'll be wasting a lot of time in the end.
No, we need a 10-year plan as a fan base. Yeah. We need a 10-year plan that says at the end of this 10 years, we're going to be in the we're going to be challenging to be in the championship. We're going to have the ground. We're going to have X percentage of the club is owned by fans. We're going to have tried to target private investment. We're going to have a fan trust membership of X thousand, and all these little things. That's the kind of strategic thinking that we need. He's pushed the boundary thinking along those lines already.
We've definitely had discussions about that. I think this is where it's good for like these working groups, because at the end of the day, we're four guys that, we do have a lot of ideas between us, but there's so many more ideas out there. And also these working groups are good to act as a bit of a sounding board for some of the ideas that we've got, and also whether that resonates with what the fans think. Because regardless of all we're here to do is make the fans' voice louder. It's not our voice representing the fans, and hopefully Andy would concur that it was, that's kind of what the meeting was the other night, and it was very much a platform where it was to air your views and say whatever you want to say, but let's make sure that we have something constructive that comes out of it that we can work with. And I think the pleasing thing as well was that a lot of the ideas that did come out were things that we've discussed, but we just perhaps went into more detail. And obviously Andy went into a lot of detail there about how his vision would appear, and I think that was good for us because it's kind of what we'd been saying behind the scenes anyway.
You can't work with 3,000 people in a team to achieve things, but obviously you need more than 4 as well. So it's getting the views and the opinions of people en masse, and then building up a big enough team of people to actually carry out the tasks that need doing to move the thing forward.
The fan base, what skills have we got amongst the fan base? So I'm hoping that for these working groups, you may uncover 1 or 2 people that do things for their professional livelihoods that actually are quite useful. For opening doors, helping you with communications, marketing, whatever it may be. Then you don't know what you're going to unlock, and hopefully you'll find 1 or 2 that will be helpful.
I'm really excited, personally. We're now at a time that we've not been at before. Oldham's never been at this point before. We've never had so many people wanting to get involved. We've never had the potential that we've got now. It's not going to be easy, and it's going to have its challenges. But we do have talented people. We do have enthusiastic, passionate people that want to do something now, because we've reached our limit of this mediocrity. We've reached the limit. I bring enthusiasm and a bit of patience in terms of editing and recording and all this, but I have very little experience. I don't really know the ins and outs of anything, and which is why I have people on the podcast to fill those gaps and to bring their knowledge. And there are people out there that have got a lot of experience, that have been through similar things before, and you need to marry. It's like even bringing it back to football in the first 11. You need to marry energy and enthusiasm with experience. If we're going to be successful on the pitch, we need to do that. If we're going to be successful off the pitch, we need to do that. You could even bring that back to what's happening in the staff at Oldham, in the ownership and people that are running the club. We've been lacking in relevant experience. So across the board, it's vitally important to bring energy, enthusiasm and experience on board. And, anyone who's listening now who thinks that they've got something that they can offer, in terms of their experience, then they need to get in touch either with me or with Push the Boundary or offer it out just on the hashtag, and we'll take it forward and we'll do something with it, because, you know, we're not going to sit back and just let our club die. But at the same time, in order to not do that, we have to all fucking contribute and roll our sleeves up. And, you know, like you, Andy, you've got a lot of really good stuff to say. You're intelligent. You've got a good understanding of the club. You've got good experience. You know, it's the gauntlet's down to you now. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, you need to get more involved. You need to do something. You might be doing it. I might not know about it, but just from this is the first time I've ever met you, I've ever spoke to you. You know, you've got a lot to offer. That's what it is now. It's like it's realizing that you've got, not just you personally, but everybody needs to realize they've got something to offer for the club.
I'm prepared to give my time to the Push the Boundary lads and get involved in their cause. If they want me to get involved in something, project manage something, you know, give my time to it, I'm more than happy to do that.
Great.
From a distance.
We can't all dedicate our lives to it, can we? You know, we've all got to work and we've all got to do what we've got to do. But the more of us that are willing to contribute to do something at some level, it's going to make life easier for everybody else, isn't it? And then we're going to see progress. We can't expect Push the Boundary to do it all at 4 of them, and we can't expect Trust Oldham to do it all, 8 of them, or however many there is. One of the things that you need to do if you're going to be successful is know when to ask for help and delegate and manage it that way. So,
exactly, and you don't have like a, you know, I sometimes have a bit of a romanticised like idea of football, and you know, you look at this and, you know, you want to be sort of sat there when it's our 150th anniversary and saying, do you remember when we were on our 125th anniversary and all the fans rallied round and helped save the club? You know, and it be a defining moment in our history and what we do, rather than just sort of be apathetic about it and do nothing. You know, let's get behind it. You know, there are people with skills out there without question. And, you know, and a few have contacted us and, you know, sort of said, I can do this, I can help out with this if you want me to. And we try and engage with those people as much as we possibly can. But yeah, get in touch. You know, if you're listening and you think that you can't make a difference, you know, you definitely can.
The Boundary Park Alert System is a Studio 6 production. It's hosted, edited and mixed by me, Matt Dean. You can contact me on Twitter at DublinOAFC and the show on Twitter, Instagram and Facebook at OAFC Podcast. Our email is bpalertsystem@gmail.com for all your voice messages, and please, if you like the show, do review and subscribe on whichever platform you listen. If you'd like to know more about Push the Boundary, you can visit their website pushtheboundary.co.uk and follow them on Twitter at PTB_OAFC. The title music for the show is by DJ and producer Starion, and you can visit redlaserrecords.bandcamp.com for more information. Thanks for listening.